Good afternoon, everyone. Just checking that I'm audible across the room. Maybe it just might be easier to hold it. So my name is Desmond Mushi. I'm a Tanzanian from Kilimanjaro. I think the Honorable Minister spoke about Kilimanjaro yesterday. But I think above all, I'm a Yanga fan, so I support Yanga. And for those of you... And so the match yesterday distracted me from the presentation, but truly, truly glad that you're all here. I'm humbled, really, as a Tanzanian, but also from Meta, and I'll tell you a little bit about Meta to be here today. So really, really grateful for the invitation. I'll just go through the presentation. I think a lot of the things that I had planned to speak about have been spoken at length with other speakers, so things around blockchain, around the enabling environment. I think Ben Roberts spoke about the enabling environment earlier today. So I'll just focus on one thing, and that's the VR and what that means for work in the future. So as I said, I'm Desmond from Meta, and that's really the introduction. And a little bit about my role. So that's not me. That's just a gentleman wearing wireless devices. But really what Meta is, and how many know about Meta? Because we might just start, of course, the director does. How many know of Meta? So Meta is the company that owns, I believe, platforms that most of us use. So that is WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram. Okay, so previously we used to be known as Facebook, and I'll tell you why the journey has changed even the name from Facebook, which is what we used to call the company, to now what we are called as Meta. And as a public policy manager, really I am an ambassador between our stakeholders in the East and Horn of Africa region. I'm Tanzanian, but I cover the East and Horn of Africa region based out of Nairobi. And so between our stakeholders, and that's government, that's CSO, that's mobile network operators, value chain actors within the innovation ecosystem, and Meta, the platform. So it's for us to try and make sure that these opportunities that Meta has to present to our region are realized by the institutions or people that work in our regions, but also to take to Meta the frustrations, challenges, and opportunities that we see in the regions that we cover. And Eastern Horn is the East Africa region minus Burundi, because it's French-speaking, plus countries like Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, of course, is within EAC, and Somalia. So that's the job that I do. I'll be quite quick. I think some of these things were touched upon yesterday, really the journey of technology from where we used to go to a space where we can use mainframe computers, to when we had computers on top of a desk, to a time when we could actually work with a computer, be it a laptop, or a phone, to a time where we can actually go into a space from whichever, and I think different people mentioned about this journey in different ways. The journey that I think might be interesting to you is to also think about the content. Before, we used to go to a place where we interacted with what was in front of us. Then the journey changed to a point where we could interact with it. So when you think about social media, be it Jamii forums or Facebook, you could interact. You post something, I comment, or I like, with an emoji or something like that, to a point where, because we had smartphones, we could take videos, and a lot of our content is, moved from text to videos, to a time when we could actually do Zoom calls and things like that. So there's a huge journey on us just being passive receivers of content to us being active participants of content generation. Which is why, our name has changed from Facebook to Meta, to Signal, the pivot from, Facebook just being a platform, to the journey that we think we are a part of, as a part of our global innovation system towards the metaverse. So really, what's the metaverse? Really, it's just when you think about immersive experiences, the sense of being, the sense of feeling, the sense of being in a place far from here. As I was telling Mwenyekiti, that I was hoping to be present here today, maybe from Dar es Salaam, which is where I live, or Nairobi, which is where I work, within the metaverse. So maybe in the future, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, we can actually have, a CTO annual event within the metaverse, and we can all do that maybe from, maybe you can choose Trinidad and Tobago or Gambia next time within a metaverse and just have that meeting there. And I think that's where we are going. It might seem far-fetched, but there's semblance of that happening, not just within the world, but in Africa as well. There was a competition on XR, and when I say XR, I'll explain a little bit later. It's really use of augmented and virtual reality, and there were a lot of innovations coming from across the continent. Of course, last year's competition had Tanzania winning, so really Tanzania is doing fairly well within the ecosystem, and that's great to see. So a lot of these things I'm speaking about today aren't imagined. They are actually real. They are happening. I think Vodacom yesterday, the presentation also showed that even within the country that we are in, there's a lot of things happening towards that space. As I mentioned, there's 2 core technologies when you think about, the metaverse. The first is augmented reality, which is basically just having a phone. It's overlaying reality. So you can take your phone, and on top of it, you can see a 3D image of things, as you can see there, Usually, so that's augmented reality. Usually would have a gadget or something like that and put onto something. I've seen, what do you call them, ads by one of the mobile network operators in Tanzania, actually even in this particular space, where you can just take a photo on something and then it gives you maybe a song or, an ad. So I've seen this technology being used. Virtual reality is a little bit different. You get into something, maybe glasses, Ray-Bans or something like that, or Oculus devices, and within that, you can move into a different world. You can be immersed into a different experience. So be it us meeting in Menlo Park or Trinidad. I don't know why I like Trinidad and Tobago, because I had it yesterday and I was very excited. So that is really what virtual reality experience would look like. There's a lot of use cases, and I'll touch upon them later. But it's an ecosystem. As I mentioned, there's been different speakers that have spoken about this, that this is an ecosystem. It's not just one journey. It's not just the technology changing. It's the enabling environment. Whether or not you have 5G spectrum enabled for even discussions around 6 gigahertz and things like that, whether or not you have content producers from around our countries. So we don't just want content coming from Menlo Park or, we also want Africans or people from our regions or the regions we represent to also be content producers, so that content is also relevant to them. Because, sometimes part of the reason people don't use some of these platforms as much as they ordinarily would is because they can't relate to the content. So how do we ensure that we have content producers? Platforms that are developed, devices that are affordable, and that are compatible with everything that's in present. But as I mentioned, I think there's been a lot of discussions around connectivity, and our region is really ripe when it comes to creators. We have a lot of content creators, and it would be great to see governments enable for that. Use cases, I'll talk a little bit about work today. There's education, different ways in which this can be used in education. For those of you who went to school in Tanzania, there's something we used to call alternative to practical, which means some schools have funds, and so they can do practicals as practicals, but for those schools that didn't have enough funds, you really would imagine what that practical would be like. You knew what would happen, so you go there and say, this is what, if you mix this and this. Some of you, how many remember that? I think most of us, I did that as well. It was an alternative to practical. It wasn't really a practical, but I knew what was supposed to happen. When you mix these two things, this is supposed to happen. There's no surprises there. You are not really practicing it, but you can imagine doing alternative to, but instead of alternative practical, you can actually do practical, because you don't really need a lab. You can do most of those things in a virtual world. You can have people experience and do things like that. We've seen them in health, for example. There's a lot of economic imperative to most of this work. I think there's a study by Analysis Group that says, in sub-Saharan Africa alone, it's around 10 billion, 40 billion in the next 10 years, so 44 billion every single year. Much of it in countries like Nigeria, really leading the ground when it comes to that. And so I'll just focus really very quickly, and I'll try to save time on, what VR can do for work. And so when you imagine work in the past, we used to go to work, and after work ended. I think digital platforms changed that mindset a little bit. And so there was work that could be done. For example, I work out of Nairobi. I'm currently here, but work is ongoing. So when you think about the space that we live in, digital platforms allowed us flexibility, speed, autonomy, as well as efficiency, whilst, physical spaces gave us something different, a feeling of, belonging or being present and things like that. That was great, but I think, because of technological advancements, we felt informed, we felt empowered and connected, but over time, that feeling started to transition to a feeling of being overwhelmed, Instead of being empowered, you feel burnout because there's just overwhelmed because there's so much information out there, some of it true, some of it not true. But instead of feeling connected, there's a feeling of just being, loneliness or being alone. And so what AR is supposed to enable for us to do is to increase, to reduce some of those issues, intensity, fatigue, reduce the issue or address the issues of reduced mobility and address health issues, wellness issues, which is important. And as we are thinking of that, we are doing that. That is possible because of that sweet spot, as you can see, between the digital and the virtual world. What the virtual world actually provides you now is the feeling of being present, of spontaneity, really very similar to the feeling that you'd have in being physical. So when you think about the physical, if I am to go back, just very quickly, when you think about physical and digital, what physical would enable for you is fairly similar to what the virtual world now affords you as well. So what can VR do for work? I think there's 4 key things. I've highlighted 3. I'll touch very quickly on the 4th. Learning and training. There's meeting and collaboration. As the chair was saying, collaboration is really key. And there's the issue of creativity as well. So how do we do that? And I know I am pressed with time. I think when it comes to virtual learning, there's just a lot of research that shows when you learn in a virtual world, it's a lot better than if you learn in a physical space or just listening or something like that. It's more immersive, it's more impactful, it's more hands-on. You feel like you're a part of that process, and it's less risky. For example, those of us in mining or those people working in mining, that's just very difficult. So that's examples that you can see in terms of safety, instead of onboarding. So if someone is coming into your company for the first time, they can go through that journey in a virtual experience and feel as though they've actually done it themselves. So that's one. Research also shows that when you compare to traditional methods, this is much better, in terms of focuses. And this was done by PwC in terms of people feeling more emotionally involved and it being more impactful as well. Creativity, for those of you who are not as creative like myself, I think it allows you to be in a space that you otherwise wouldn't have been. In a 2D, 3D experience, is really difficult to see things. But if you can see them, if you can observe them, if you can be a part of it and move things around like your peer is, then it allows you to do something that is a lot more doable and inclusive as you think about it than was the case before. So those are some of the examples. I'll touch collaboration. I think this point was labored a lot yesterday, just you being there as opposed to just, listening or something like that is the experience that virtual reality experiences enable you to have, and there's a lot of use cases. The part that I think is key is also well-being. Because of this experience of either being physical or digital without being virtual, becomes a challenge. And virtual reality actually allows you to experience some of this. So there's a lot of use cases of people actually, doing gymming together without necessarily having to go to a gym. And it's just as effective as, having gone to it. And, one of the reasons I really wanted to come here, partly it's because it's Zanzibar and Tanzania, but I also had, it's HR, so there's a lot of would-be employers. Why would you say no? So I thought, let me just come, and so that you can see me, and if I ever knock your door, then you can remember me. but we are some of those people that are employed. You manage people, we are the people, and this is the experiences. I know the studies on the UK and the US, but I'm sure if you are to do a similar study in Africa or in the Caribbean or other countries that are within the Commonwealth, the experience will be fairly the same. That people feel like the metaverse helped them feel more engaged, and that it has a lot more value for them than would be the case otherwise. This was touched upon yesterday, so I won't dwell on it, but really it's the enabling environment. What needs to be in place to enable for things like privacy, safety and integrity, especially for children and youth and young people. Issues around inclusion so that everybody feels like this is a part of them. It's not just a journey that a few people are embarking on, but a journey that takes everyone together. And as I said, economic opportunities just being there and being realized. So I'll pause here for questions. I think I was allocated 15 minutes, and I've tried to do it in 15 minutes.